Hey guys, how's it going out there? Hope you guys are doing well. So today we got some Star Wars news from Mark Hamill, the iconic Luke Skywalker, and he has confirmed that he will not be returning to the Star Wars universe pretty much ever. He has pretty much confirmed his permanent departure from Star Wars, and I feel like this is kind of an indication of just the kind of dire state of Star Wars. I mean, Star Wars, it's been no secret, has been in a very bad place for quite a while. I mean, we have not had a Star Wars movie in like 4 or 5 years, something like that. And the last Star Wars movie we had, Rise of Skywalker, was pretty much universally atrocious. And ever since then, they have really not known what to do. I mean, Star Wars has just been kind of in this just flailing state of just trying to find something to, get it going again. Like, I mean, they've had the shows come out. They've had Mandalorian, they've had Andor, they had oh god, that what was that one? The Acolyte. That one seemed to be universally hated. Mandalorian seems to have kind of outworn its welcome, and Andor seems to be going strong, but even that seems to be kind of somewhat falling off. And so, yeah, thinking about Star Wars, after reading about Mark Hamill, it kind of really just makes you realize that Star Wars is really just in a very strange situation because it's hard to imagine that one of the most, I wouldn't say if it's the most iconic IP of all time, but it's definitely in the top five. I mean, it's up there. The fact that one of the most iconic and arguably influential IPs of all time is in a pretty much dead state is just bizarre. Like and also just the handling of Star Wars from Disney has just been fascinatingly insane because and I know that people like to trash Disney now and they like to trash Disney's, handling of Marvel and Star Wars, but people forget that Disney was responsible for pretty much the peak of the MCU. Like, Endgame, Infinity War, Civil War, Spider-Man, Black Panther. That was Disney Marvel. So you can't just, vilify them for the state of Marvel now and not give them the credit for making it what it was and kind of retaining that to a certain point. But the strange thing is when you look at Star Wars and you look at Marvel, it's almost as if they just from the start with Star Wars did everything wrong that they started doing with the MCU post Endgame. Like when they first bought Star Wars, because they bought Star Wars, I think it was for God, I think a few $1 billion. I think, and I mean, well, I don't know if it was a few billion. It was a high price tag. The Saleys, it was definitely up there in the high market price. And so obviously, spending that much money for anything, you want to get a return very quickly. And so I really think they just pretty much rushed into just making something with no plan, no actual idea of what this is going to look like going forward. And you can tell. I mean, looking back on all the Star Wars films, it just looks like shit slapped together on a wall and just kind of seeing what sticks, what doesn't, and then realizing, oh, we kind of messed up a lot. So how do we salvage this for some kind of grand finale of this fuck trilogy, which was even worse, fucking Palpatine coming back and Ray being a Palpatine and the fucking weird romance between Kylo and Ray and the just the abysmal handling of Finn. And also the abysmal handling of pretty much all the new characters. Like Snoke, he was handled poorly. Had a lot of potential. I mean, Snoke could have been a very iconic, very interesting villain, and they just got rid of him as a throwaway, pretty much for no reason. And then it was turned out that actually, Snoke wasn't even like the big bad. He was just a puppet of Palpatine that was being controlled from the shadows. It's almost like the fucking Naruto meme of like the person behind the person behind the person controlling the person. There's just like four layers of manipulation and people being used as puppets for a grander evil. And so it seems like Marvel and Star Wars, which they're both under the Disney umbrella, both are in a pretty bad state. But it seems like Star Wars is in a worse state than Marvel because with Marvel, there still is a degree of interest in it that there really isn't for Star Wars. Like when you think about like the Doomsday, when the announcement for Doomsday came out, it was a big deal. Robert Downey Jr. coming back, whether people loved it, whether people hated it, it was a big deal. And people, they loved Guardians 3, they loved the recent Spider-Man movie. People loved the Thunderbolts, which just came out. So there is still a somewhat strong investment and interest in the MCU. It's just kind of not that consistent, strong investment from the audience that it was at one point, where like every single Marvel movie, people just had to go see it. Now it's just kind of like, well, this looks kind of cool. It looks promising. I might check it out. Or, well, I might wait for the reviews to come out. And if it's trash, I won't look at it. Or I might wait for streaming. But Star Wars, I mean, I've known people that have been lifelong Star Wars fans that they just have no interest in anything Star Wars. Like, you talk to them about Star Wars, and it's kind of like, yeah, I mean, whatever, I might watch, Andor, or I might watch the new Mandalorian or Ahsoka, but I might not. Like, there's just really no interest. It just seems like even some of the most diehard Star Wars fans are just kind of defeated. Just like, yeah, I might watch the new show, and I guess they got a movie coming out, but like, there's no just like a passionate investment like there used to be. I mean, there was a time for quite a period of time where Star Wars was an event. Like when a Star Wars movie came out, it was pretty much like an Infinity War Endgame level event. Like you had to go see it because they were so rare and they were so spaced out that like you wanted to see it. It didn't have a whole lot of. And then we got to the point where they were just releasing so much Star Wars that people got burnt out, and then the movies became so divisive that it split the fan base. And then once it split the fan base, they made Rise of Skywalker, which combined both sides and then universally hated a movie. And then now they are just kind of in this strange situation where they don't really have a plan for a new movie. I mean, they've talked about Rey making, a new movie, like making a movie with Rey, but I don't know. I don't dislike Rey as much as other people do, and certainly Rey has a lot of problems as a character. But I just think also she's just not a character that can hold a franchise. She's not a Luke Skywalker or a Han Solo or a character of that caliber. I mean, she's been the poster child of Star Wars, the new Star Wars, the Disney Star Wars, for the last 10 plus years, and she just kind of is there. Like, she doesn't have that Luke Skywalker status. I mean, I'd even say that the Mandalorian is more of a main character, Star Wars character than Rey's been. And I think it's also just because, like, Rey just, I don't know, Rey's just kind of been there. She just kind of exists. She has a somewhat personality, but it's nothing that interesting. There's not much memorable about Rey, if you think about it. I mean, you think about, Luke Skywalker from the original trilogy, and there's so many iconic moments, the one that's brought up all the time is, the Luke, I am your father, training with Yoda. There's just so many, iconic moments and just parts of the old trilogy that you can point to and remember with Luke. And with Rey, you really don't have that. If anything, you have more cringe moments with Rey, like her awkwardly kissing Kylo, her awkward exchanges with Kylo. It just she really just has not been a main character in the series that she has been positioned as a main character, which is kind of crazy. And also when it comes to the new Star Wars cast, I mean, Mark Hamill, he's made it very clear that he doesn't want to come back. But it also seems like the new actors and actresses, they also aren't too keen on coming back. Like Daisy Ridley, I mean, obviously she'll come back if they ask her to be like Rey again. But it doesn't seem like she's that interested. She's just kind of there. And like all the other actors, like they're just kind of like, oh, I'm doing my own thing, or yeah, Star Wars, that was kind of a phase, but I'm doing other stuff now. Like it seems like even the actors and actresses involved with Star Wars are kind of like, yeah, I'm just not really keen on going back to that shit. Like that was a clusterfuck, and it's still just a complete fucking circus that's being run by zoo animals. I'm just not going to go back to that. I'm actually going to do quality work and actually do things I enjoy. Like it really seems like the vast majority of actors and actresses and people involved with Star Wars really are not interested in it. Like, I mean, I know Han Solo and Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford has been. I mean, it's not that he hates Star Wars, but he's been wanting Han to die for fucking 20 to 30 years now. Like, I think actually Harrison Ford wanted Han Solo to die back in the day. Like, he was wanting Han to die a long time ago. So I mean, like, obviously you always have like your Harrison Fords where just kind of like, yeah, I play this shallow iconic character, makes me a lot of money, launched me to stardom, but I'm not really that invested in playing this, for 20, 30 years. Like, I think he should be killed off. But now, like, Mark Hamill, like, you would think Mark Hamill, because he's definitely a massive fan of the franchise, and obviously being one of the most central parts of it. But Mark Hamill, he's really not been the most quiet or discreet with the fact that he has not liked the new Star Wars for a while, and him and Ryan Johnson did not get along. That's actually kind of famous now. It's famously known that Ryan Johnson and Mark Hamill, they did not get along with the direction of Luke, how he was handled, his story, how he ended up in the new trilogy. There's a lot about the new trilogy that Mark Hamill is just not a fan of when it comes to Luke and how his story was, portrayed and how it ended up. And I think for Mark, it was just kind of like, yeah, I just think I'm just checked out. Like, Star Wars is pretty much dead. They have fucked Luke to a point where I don't even know how you could rehabilitate him. And so he's probably just like, yeah, I'm done. Like, I've done this for 30, 40 years. They have fucked me on this for the last 10. I'm just gonna call it a day. And the fact that Mark is just saying like, yeah, I'm not coming back to this ever again. To me, that this really is a nail in the coffin. I mean, obviously, Star Wars is not going to just drop dead and become a blacklisted IP, but like it really puts a nail in the coffin to just like how dire the state of Star Wars is. That Mark Hamill has written himself off from ever coming back, and it's also unfortunate because since Mark is not going to come back, pretty much the original trilogy, group are gone. Yeah, I mean, Leia, she's gone, obviously. Carrie Fisher passing away. Harrison Ford, he's done. I don't even know if they could pay him enough money to come back to Star Wars. Mark Hamill, he's done. And I mean, I guess that leaves Chewie and R2D2 and C3PO. But I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I really do like C3PO and R2D2, but they need to stop fucking showing up. Like they do not need to be somehow in every part of the galaxy. Like there's this massive, expansive universe full of hundreds of different planets with species and different events and stuff going on, and somehow we always end up finding Chewbacca, R2D2, C3PO before he died, Han Solo. Like it's like why do we end up with the same fucking characters we've been with for the last 40 years? Or descendants of characters, whether they're Skywalker or Palpatines. Like, can we get some other interesting characters outside of that? Like, I mean, I will say that's where the shows have kind of excelled is that they've moved outside of the Skywalkers, the Obi-Wans, the Vaders. Like, they're doing their own thing with new characters, different parts of the universe, different aspects of the Star Wars universe that we haven't really gone into. So I will give the shows credit for that. But when it comes to the movies, they've really played it safe of like, okay, we got to have R2D2, we got to have C3PO, we got to have Chewbacca. Because everyone loves them, everyone knows them. You have to have them there. But the fact that Mark is gone, like the whole original trilogy characters are pretty much gone. I mean, like obviously Chewbacca's still there, but I don't know. I mean, I don't. It's not that Chewbacca can't be like a solo character, but he kind of can in a way because like I don't really see what you could do with Chewie at this point. Like I mean, really, Chewbacca would probably would be just a fucking depressed old Wookiee. Like I mean, he's witnessed his best friend die. Pretty much all of his friends are dead. Leia's dead. Luke's dead. Han's dead. He's pretty much lost everyone he knows. So he'd probably just be a perpetually depressed Wookiee just wandering the universe. I mean, in a way that might be cool, but I don't know. The way they've handled the legacy characters, I'm not too hopeful that they would do that in a very tasteful way. I think it would just end up like a repeat of Luke Skywalker, which that was atrocious how that was handled. Fucking milking an alien on a remote planet. You know that the fact that that was that was where Luke ended up at was it's still just kind of fucking wild that they looked at that and was like, yeah, this is where Luke would end up at. That's still just crazy to me. But you know, and you still got C-3PO and R2D2, and again, like I said, those characters they need to. I'm not saying they need to die, but they need to just be permanently retired from Star Wars. I mean, it's kind of people kind of forget this, but C-3PO and R2D2 in universe, they are fucking ancient. They've been around since Vader was a kid, and God, how long has it been in universe? It's had to have been like at least 50, 60 years. I mean, I don't know how old Vader was when he died, but like they have been around for a long time. So like, I think it's to the point where it's like, okay, we need to just, have an ending for these characters where they're just done. And honestly, a pitch I would have for R2D2 and C3PO, I think they would be cool as like intergalactic librarians. Like they're these, keepers of information across the universe. Because I think it fits. Like I think C3PO is like like an intergalactic librarian, or like a not like an oracle, but someone who just has vast amounts of information across the galaxy and universe that you could go to. Because I mean, C3PO he has been through a lot. Like I mean, he's met some of the most iconic characters in the Star Wars universe. I mean, he was made by Vader. He knew Luke Skywalker, knew Han Solo, knew Princess Leia. He knew Rey. He's known pretty much most of if not no, well, not all of them, but he's met like a good majority of some of the most iconic historical characters in universe. So like he definitely has a claim to being a very knowledgeable character. I think that'd be a cool way to end it. Because I mean, honestly, I don't know how you really end C3PO and R2D2's story, because they're also kind of just in a weird situation because like all their friends are dead. And it's just the two of them. If you don't include Chewbacca, and it's like, well, what do they do? Do they just wander the universe? Like, I mean, C-3PO especially, I mean, he's definitely not he's never been someone who's wanted to be, dangerous adventure or traveling across the universe. Like, I really see C-3PO just being like, you know what, fuck this. I'm just going to settle down on some planet, become like a librarian or something like that, or just become a civilian and just chill somewhere. Like I could see him doing that, because I really don't see C-3PO. And also, like, again, like C-3PO and R2D2, again, I like them. R2D2 definitely one of my favorites, but it's just like, what else can you do with them? And also they've lost everything, and I don't think you should really try to pair them with new characters. Like I could see them, and I hope they don't do this, but I could see them trying to like pair them with like Rey. I don't know. I'm not sure if Rey's gonna have a kid at any point. I'm sure probably in the comics or some point she will, but I could see them like being like a like an uncle, like almost like a Timon and Pumbaa were to Simba's kid in the sequel to The Lion King, where they're like kind of the uncles that like take care of like the kid, and they go off on adventures with Rey's daughter or son, and that's what they do. I mean, that could be cool. Like, I mean, now that I think about that might work. I mean, you could have them as like companions, or like I mean, it's kind of weird because they're not human, so I mean they wouldn't be like family, I guess, in traditional sense, but like that could work. You have like C-3POs, like the overly cautious, overbearing, very concerned, very high strung, one, and then R2D2 is a more crazy, wild, adventurous one, and having to balance that with this kid like that. That might be cool, but I don't know. I just think that when you think of any type of ending for those characters, I don't even know what it would be at this point because I mean, C-3PO, he's technically died, quote unquote, several times, and R2D2, I don't think R2D2's died really at all. I think he's not really. No, I don't think so. I don't think that R2D2's ever died. I might be wrong. He might have died in the comics, but I don't think, as far as like the movies, to my knowledge, he hasn't died. But yeah, it's kind of crazy how so many of the original, Star Wars characters, like the main cast, like how just poorly they've been handled. And I'd even throw C-3PO and R2D2 into that because I mean, it just seemed like they were just there out of obligation. Like we got to have them there, but we really don't have a plan for them. And I still think it's a crime that we never really got that wholesome reunion of Luke and Han and Leia and Chewie and R2D2 and C-3PO. We never really got that. All the original characters, they kind of were divided up into groups and they never really interacted. Like, yeah, I don't think that Luke ever talked or even interacted with Han or Luke, not Luke, but Chewbacca. I don't even think they interacted at all. And I don't even think C-3PO and R2D2, like by the time Rise of Skywalker came around, they were pretty much by themselves. And then there's that scene in Rise of Skywalker where C-3PO is like, I'm taking a one last look at my friends before he gets reset. And it's like, you don't know any of these fucking people. Like, all your friends are dead. Like, by that point, Luke was dead, Leia was dead, Han was dead, Chewie was gone, R2D2, I think, was the only one he actually knew in there and had history with. So it was like, these are just strangers. Like, you've known these people at most, like, maybe a few months. Like, you have no actual connection to these people. And so, yeah, that's the other thing is like the endings for Luke and Han and Leia, they were just very disappointing. Like the way Han died was very underwhelming, and I mean obviously when it comes to Leia, that's a little bit more tricky because Carrie Fisher abruptly died and they were in the middle of filming, so they kind of had to make the best of a very unfortunately tragic situation. So I can't blame them too much, but when it comes to Luke, they just shit the bed massively when it comes to how they handle from the moment he was introduced to the moment he exited the new sequel series. He was just handled poorly. I will never think that they did him anywhere near the justice that they should have. You'll never be able to convince me that how they ended up using Luke was the best way or even a good way to. It was just being contrarian for the sake of being contrarian, storytelling. Like I don't feel like it really fit. And it's not to say that how they wanted Luke to be portrayed couldn't work, but the issue is you have to do a lot of on-screen development for that. Like you can't just have Luke just not be seen at all and know him from the original series, and then suddenly he's a complete 180 of a character in this. It's because it's such a jarring cosmic change in how he was. He is such a fundamentally different character from what he was before, with no actual development of before it. So it just from one extreme, from being one character to a completely different one, and people are like, "Who the fuck is this character? Like, this isn't Luke Skywalker." And Mark, he's come out and said that, pretty much the Luke Skywalker in the Disney trilogy is not the Luke that he knows, like the Luke that he portrayed in the original. Like this is an entirely different character, which I'd agree with that. And I think that's also why Mark is done with Star Wars. Is like I think he's just done with Disney Star Wars. Like I think he's just not happy with how they've handled Star Wars as a franchise. And he's like, not only did you ruin Luke Skywalker as far as he's concerned, but you have just fucked over this series to where like it is just there. There's no interest, no intrigue. They can't get a movie together to save their life. I mean, it seems like every other week or year they're going to make a movie about this character and about that character and it falls apart. They're going to make a Rey movie that has yet to materialize, and I guess they're making a Ryan Gosling Star Wars movie, which we'll see if that ever gets anywhere. Ryan Reynolds, he's pitched an R-rated Star Wars movie. That probably won't go nowhere. And honestly, it looks like we're probably not going to have another Star Wars movie for a few more years, because they don't have anything right now. They don't have anything. There's no production that I know of. It's like they're just pretty much tossing around ideas of what they could do, but they don't really have a solid plan of what they are going to do and having a release date. Like, there's nothing. Like, it's crazy we've gone this long without an actual Star Wars movie. Because at one point, I would say it would have been a good thing to not have a Star Wars movie. Because I think that Marvel should take this route. I think Marvel should get to a point where they just not stop releasing films, but like they just have 1 to 2 films released within like 3 years. You just really develop those handful of films, and you make them the best they can. You spread them out, and it's the quantity over quality. It's the quality over quantity, mindset. And I think with Star Wars, for a while, I thought, it's good that they've had some time to not like just have back to back films from Skywalker. But it's kind of getting to the point now where it's been so long since there's been a movie, and seeing how universally disliked Rise of Skywalker was, people are just kind of like, yeah, I really don't care. Like, I really don't have any interest in the Star Wars movie. I don't care if they're making one. Like, I'll be curious to see when and if they make a new Star Wars movie, what the reception will be from the public, because I feel like it might have 1 to 2 outcomes. It might be that because there's not been a Star Wars movie for as many years as there has been, and depending on how many more years it'll take, there might be kind of like that nostalgic, explosion of like, oh shit, Star Wars, it's been a while. Or it could be people remembering all the shit that happened with Disney Stars and being like, oh, fuck, this again? They're still making this shit and people just don't care. Or it could be a mix of both where, a lot of people are excited and they want to, see the next movie. Or there's people that are like, they're just done with Star Wars and they have no interest in seeing anything with Star Wars. Because I've known a few people that, they've loved Star Wars their whole lives, and they really just don't have any desire to have anything to do with Star Wars. Like, they don't even play the games anymore. I consider myself pretty much a lifelong Star Wars fan. Like, I played, Battlefront on the PS2, loved the Clone Wars, loved looking at the TV shows back in the day, loved playing the video games on the PS2. So I'm a pretty much a lifelong Star Wars fan. But even I'm just kind of like, yeah, if there's a new movie that comes out, I might watch it at some point, but I'm not going to be just rushing to the theaters or just overly ecstatic about it. I mean, unless it's just like that good of a movie or trailer, I really don't see me even getting that excited for a new Star Wars movie, because there's not much to get excited for. I mean, the shows are really keeping. I mean, it's not that Star Wars would just die if it didn't have the shows, but the shows are really what's keeping its public relevancy. Having Andor, Acolyte, for better or worse. I mean, for worse when it comes to Acolyte, for better when it comes to Andor. But even with the shows, those are kind of, wearing out their welcome, where people, when Mandalorian first came out, people were just ecstatic. They were fascinated because this was something new. Like, we really hadn't had like a Mandalorian, type show, this spaghetti western in a cosmic setting for Star Wars. It was new and interesting, but now it's just become redundant and stale, and people just are done. And it doesn't help that Grogu has just kind of fucking hijacked Mandalorian and pretty much Star Wars to a point where like Grogu is just everywhere because he's cute and popular and sells a lot of merch. So we're gonna have him just fucking appear everywhere. So that doesn't help either. And so outside the shows, and maybe the games. I mean, the games are good. Like, I've played a few of the new games. That I forget his name. That Jedi game came out a few years ago. I played that, and that was pretty good. I mean, the games are okay, but people aren't really overly excited for the games or overly interested in them. And then the shows are just kind of hit or miss in quality. So it's like there really isn't a lot going on for Star Wars. And it seems like Disney are just kind of in this state of just disarray of like, what do we do? Like, do we make a movie about this character and that character? And then they can't figure out what they want to do. And they were kind of almost on the MCU route of just wanting to make a spin-off or a TV show about every fucking character. and they found out quicker than Marvel did of like, yeah, let's not do that. Let's actually just scale that back and only make like important actual quality, or as good a quality as Disney can be with Star Wars so far, content. And so they've kind of reeled that back. But I'm curious. I'm curious to see what Star Wars looks like going forward, because I don't see that it's really going to suddenly get an injection of energy, from the public, of like people being interested, because there's really just nothing to be interested for. And when you think about what's come out the last few years, I mean, depending on who you are, some people they love The Last Jedi, some people hate it, and then that's really the other thing, is like these movies have just fractured the fan base and then unite them to hate it. That it's just like I don't even know at this point how you make something that can be just across the board loved again, like Star Wars used to be. Like it's not impossible, but it'd just be very hard to do that. So I'm curious. I'm curious to see what they'll end up doing, and like what we get for a Star Wars movie, and well, how it'll be received from the public when it does come out. But with that said, I think that's going to be enough of me talking about Star Wars from now. And till next time, I will see you guys later.